This morning. Great. A couple of people straggling in. See you, Gino. So this is our second meeting for the 2019-2020 Work Ethic Certification Program. We seem to have a pretty good turnout today. Just a reminder, a couple things. Make sure you're checking your emails for me consistently. I send out a lot of good stuff, reminders for the meetings, etc. Reminders about volunteer hours. I'll send a copy of today's video out as well. And don't forget that you need to be completing your self-evaluations. In December, right when we come back after Thanksgiving break, December 3rd, I'm sending out your second self-evaluation. Again, it's a simple online form. Just fill it out, check your responses, click it, and it comes. All the results come back. We're able to see, results 1, results 2, and then in the spring we'll see results 3. So just a reminder, make sure you guys keep up with that. It's very important. Also, after winter break, we will be sending out the teacher evaluations. It'll be done online again. So make sure that we're living those 10 work ethic skills that we're having these meetings about. Make sure you're following as much as close as you can, especially in the classroom, just so your teachers get a chance to see you demonstrating those skills. Right? Make sure you're on time in class. Make sure you're turning things in on time. Make sure you work well with others. Make sure you apply active listening skills. Those are some very important things. So we'll get those out to you after winter break. All right? So self-evaluation number 2 in December, teacher self-evaluation after winter break. You have time to get that in, as well as the community service hours. Remember, it's 12 total hours. Some of you have already started to turn some of those hours into me. Great. Remember, when you get to 12, you don't have to stop. You can keep volunteering. So if you're one of the people that just love to volunteer, keep documenting those hours. All right? And we'll have a deadline to turn those in March. So today, our topic is going to be on listening skills. We have a new speaker who volunteering her time to the program. She's the Vice President of American Precision Services, and we are proud to have her. She is a class of 1998, right? Chesterton alumni. So glad to have her back. Speaking to you today is Mrs. Elisa Esavovich.
Thank you, Mr. Conner. I walk around. I just got to make sure I don't fall into this pit. A little steep here. And contrary to the sign, I'm not a member of the Chicago cast. So thank you for telling them 1998 as well. That completely dates me. But yes, I am a Chesterton High School graduate. We'll get into that. Before I start out, I just want to apologize. I am battling a sinus infection and bronchitis. And I have this nagging cough. It's awful. I apologize. I'm not going to cough in the microphone, but if I have to cough, please excuse me. I can't help it. 'Tis the season. Hopefully you guys don't get it either. So my name is Elisa Hasimovich. I am the Vice President at American Precision Services. A little bit about me, because whenever I attend a presentation or a conference and there's someone up there talking to me, I like to know what kind of qualifies them to be speaking to me about whatever topic it is. So I am a Chesterton High School graduate. After graduating from Chesterton, I attended Purdue in West Lafayette. I graduated with a degree in organizational leadership and supervision. From there, I got a job in Crown Point as a nurse recruiter. I worked in the healthcare field, recruiting nurses to come work at the hospital, nursing homes, part of the Franciscan group. Within a year, I was promoted to an HR manager position within that same company. I stayed in that for a couple of years. Then I went downtown Chicago to work at the nation's largest steel distributor. I worked in the corporate human resources department, and I was in charge of 20 different plants across the nation, all human resources type things, labor relations for union and non-union plants. I worked in that field for that company for about 8 years, and then I came to work for American Precision Services, and I have been there ever since. A little bit, you can change. I have to tell them to change the slide too. I don't have the clicker. A little bit about American Precision Services, just in curious. We are a machining and mechanical repair facility. We are located in Northwest Indiana, in Gary, right off of Klein Avenue between Gary and Hammond. It's a very specialized thing that we do. So the far left is a vertical lift pump that goes into Lake Michigan and pumps water to the steel mills. The other parts here that we're machining, those are, they go on a press that creates paper plates. So we do work for companies that make the 4-cup holders for McDonald's, Burger King, the Chinette paper plates, the steel mills obviously, but that's probably only about 15% of our business. Anything that needs to be repaired, manufactured, we can do it. So it's a very specialized thing. I don't believe that Chesterton has a machine shop here, but perhaps we'll be getting one. And it's a wonderful field to get into, and a great company to work for. But that's enough about that. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So today's topics, I actually have 2 topics. The first is applying to listening skills, and the second is following directions. And we will start off with, and I'm not here to promote this book. This is a book that I read in college that I found very helpful throughout my career. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of it, but the author is Stephen R. Covey. And in it, he says, most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. If you think about that for a minute, I think that's something we've all been guilty. You're listening to somebody, but are you really listening? You're already thinking in your mind, what am I going to say in response to this? Maybe it's an argument, maybe you're agreeing with them, it doesn't matter. But you're not fully listening. And so that was something that, out of this book, I really took away with it. I really came home to me that, you know, when you're listening, you need to actually listen with intent. Not with the intent to reply, but with the intent to understand the person. And so, just not a plug on the book or anything, but in case you want to read the book or are interested, you can go to the next slide. This is the book that I was talking about. We'll go ahead to the next one then. Thank you. So there are 7 habits. We're not going to go over them, but I want to focus on the 5th one, which is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And what that means, sorry, I keep signaling like this. Okay, so to use empathetic listening, which means to genuinely try to understand what the person is saying. It then compels them to reciprocate. And so it's building a respect. When you show that you're empathy, that you're really listening, that you're really involved in the conversation, people are more likely to have an open mind and listen to you, and especially if you're trying to influence people. If I'm trying to get someone to do something that I want them to do, me just telling them or demanding for them to do it isn't going to show respect to that other person. More than likely, they're going to tune me out and say, I don't want any part of this. But if I show empathy, and if I actively listen to them, they're more than likely going to show that to me. So that is a very important point that, like I said, the book, you like it or you don't, but these are some things that I remember reading in one of my college courses, and they stuck with me to this day. So, steps to effective listening. Now, and these are things like we all learned when we were little kids. I'm sure you guys remember in like pre-K, preschool, everybody would listen. We're all going to go get a drink of water. We're all going to take a bathroom break. These are things that we've been learning with our parents, our loved ones, in school since we were little. But just because it's something that we've been learning and taught doesn't mean that it's a skill that we don't need to hone, especially with technology and how it is nowadays. So first, and these are just things that I came up with that I feel are important. Listen with intent and be present. Not just physically present, be present in the moment. With intent, meaning I'm here to accomplish what? I need to understand this. I need to listen to this. Reality is you're not, whatever you're listening to, if it's a class, if it's a presentation, it could be this. I hope it isn't, but it may not be interesting to you. You may not like it, you may not have any interest in it, but you may be tested on it. You may have to do a project on it. And so it's important for you to listen. That you just have to keep that in the back of your mind. Like, what is the goal here? I'm going to have to learn this for some purpose. So I better listen and pay attention. Face the person that's talking to you. So important. I don't think really, I haven't really come across too many people that don't, but it's worth reminding. If someone is speaking to you, you should be facing them and looking at them. Which kind of leads us into the next one, which is maintaining eye contact. And this does not mean staring. Okay, we all know what staring is. This is uncomfortable. It's a little, I don't know, it's just uncomfortable. If someone's speaking to you and you're staring, they could lose their train of thought. It's just not a good thing. So you want to maintain relaxed eye contact. Keep eye contact with the person. You can look away every once in a while. Just don't stare at them uncomfortably. Tune out distractions. This is my number one. And I was in a meeting yesterday, and I can tell you about this. So tuning out distractions, it could be distractions in your own mind, thinking about whatever practice you have after school, thinking about a grocery list or something, a concert you want to go to. It could be your cell phone. So I'm sure as you saw me over here, I have my cell phone. Who doesn't always have a cell phone on? But as wonderful as technology is, it is a major, major distraction, and I feel very strongly that it gets in the way of our communication skills, especially in the workplace. For instance, I was running a production meeting at work yesterday. I'm talking about certain jobs that we need to get out the door to our customers by the end of the year, because we need to get paid, and it's imperative. And the person sitting next to me, their Apple Watch. So it's not even the cell phone, it's now on the watch. And I don't know how many times I've been in these conversations with people, it's even friends of mine, and they're getting an email or a text message or a phone call. That's a distraction, and it shows a lack of respect to me. So if I can implore anything upon you guys, please, when you're talking to somebody, when you're listening to a presentation, be attentive, be focused, and leave this and the watches, don't touch them, okay? Because it's really, that's the number one distraction I feel in the workplace right now when I'm speaking to somebody, is the watch or the cell phone. And lastly, don't interrupt. I know I was very guilty of this early on, I believe, in my career in high school. People were talking, and I'm already thinking of questions. I'm thinking of, okay, what am I going to say? I don't understand this. I want to interrupt, and I would interrupt. But that was a distraction to the speaker. Oftentimes, I know if someone interrupts me, a lot of times I lose my train of thought. And if I'm trying to explain something that's really important to somebody, I may forget some of the points that I wanted to press upon them because I had to stop what I was saying to answer their question. So please, don't interrupt. Let's run the next slide. So the next step would be, so that's listening skills, following directions. And I know I may sound old school, and I even have an example of it right here. I have a little piece of paper and a pen because I like to take notes. Take handwritten notes. I know it's great to, I use my phone for setting reminders. I do make little lists in it. But as far as and I use my laptop all the time. But as far as taking notes, I take them by hand, pen, and paper. And one thing I learned early on in my career, and I noticed, and it wasn't spoken, it wasn't something that was told to me by my managers or anything. It was something that I picked up by watching them. They always walked around with a legal pad and a pen. And I'm like, what are they doing? It's really important, they gotta walk around with pen and paper. Now I completely understand. I don't know how many times I'm walking into a meeting or I'm walking out into our shop and someone catches me and asks me a question or asks me to do something for them. And if I don't have that, I'm in the process of doing something and I have that on my mind and then I'm being focused, my attention's focused elsewhere. If I don't have that piece of paper and that pen to write that down, it's out of my mind. And especially with everything that we have going on nowadays and with technology, it just really helps to take those handwritten notes. Studies have proven that the process of writing things down, actually writing it down and saying it back to yourself further solidifies things into your brain. You're going to learn and keep that in your mind compared to not doing it at all or possibly typing it on a computer. So I cannot tell you enough, please take handwritten notes. Ask follow-up questions. So when the speaker is done, that is the time where you can ask follow-up questions. Anything that you missed or that you want clarified, which kind of leads us into the last one, summarize and clarify. And so what I always do is I would take, like in college, if I was at a lecture, I would take handwritten notes, and if I had questions, I would write them down at the bottom of like my notes, and that's when I would ask the professor I would restate what he said or what she said, and say, okay, is this what I'm getting? This is what I wrote down, this is what I think, but is this really what you mean by this? So that shows active listening skills, that you actually wrote that down and you're able to say it back to them, that what they said was meaningful, and you're also trying to further understand that what you wrote down and what you heard is correct so that you can better follow directions. So, with that, any questions? Yeah, I didn't cough either. Oh, you're asking questions? Okay, yeah, okay. So I did get some pre-questions, I guess. Some of the students, I think over 100 questions were submitted, which is amazing. But we narrowed it down, I think, to 7 or 8. So the first one was, how important is it to work with others during your job? This is incredibly important. One scenario that I can think of is, and I'm sure you guys probably have some experience with this, especially if you end up going to college or even in the workplace, but in class, you've had to do group projects. I remember doing them in high school, definitely remember doing them in college, and I hated them. It was like, okay, we gotta work with, why can't I just do it on my own? Because I know how to do things, I trust myself to do it and get it done by the deadline. Now I gotta work with other people, I don't know how they work, I don't know if they're gonna do their part. Group projects are incredibly important and they're preparing you for the future. Okay, you're always going to have to work with people. There is not one job that I can think of where you're not going to have some interaction with people. Even if you're working independently, you're going to have a manager, and you're going to have to communicate with that manager. So that's reality. You're going to spend the rest of your life working with people. And you're going to have to find ways to use empathy and active listening and to get what you want, to understand people, to better follow directions. It's just part of life. So working with others, incredibly important. The second question was, how does communication impact the workplace? Well, communication, it's funny. I do the hiring for our company, and a lot of times, in most job postings I've ever seen or that I've ever done, effective communication skills are always written in that. But people really don't focus a whole lot on it, and it's such an important part of it. I'll tell you what, I'm going to hire someone that can work well with others and communicate any day of the week before someone that can't. If someone tells me I don't like working with people, I don't get along with my coworkers, they could be the most skilled machinist or mechanic in the world, but I really don't want them to be a part of our team. I want people that can work with others, that can communicate, that can listen, can follow directions. I mean, all of these are kind of hand in hand. So communication impacts the workplace incredibly. It can cause projects to succeed or fail. It can cause companies to succeed and fail. So the next question would be, during work, if you give an instruction and it isn't followed correctly, even after multiple attempts to clarify with the person, how do you handle those situations? So this is a difficult one. Because if you're giving someone instructions and over again they're not following, there's a couple things that could be going on here. I think the first thing I would do is sit with the person and ask them, what do you think is the issue? Why do you think you're unable to follow the directions that I have been giving you, or the instructions? It could be a learning issue. And in that case, there's all different things involved with that. It could be that they aren't processing what I'm asking them to do. It could be that maybe their listening skills, they're a visual person. I need to write it down. So I think first having a one-on-one conversation with somebody to see what they feel, having empathy, instead of listening, what they feel is getting in the way of them following directions appropriately is the issue, and trying to work with that. It could also mean, like I said, writing things step-by-step down. Maybe they're a visual person. It could be getting another person, a coworker involved and saying, okay, can you be a part of this and help me explain this to this person? Or it could be just the person doesn't want to follow directions, they're being negligent, and they need to have disciplinary action. So it could be a number of different things, but I always think that communication first. Talk to people, ask them, hey, what's up? What's going on here? What is the issue? How do I get the most out of meetings I attend? Now, there are some meetings can be incredibly boring at work. They can be incredibly useful. We all have to attend them. But the way to get the most out of it is kind of, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but to listen with intent, to be focused, to take handwritten notes, to just be present, to tune out all of those distractions, and really be in that moment. So you have a half-hour meeting to discuss that, put everything else aside, be in that moment of that half-hour meeting, write things down, ask questions, get what you need done and accomplished during that meeting. The next question, what are the most important active listening skills to have in the workplace? So, once again, focus, 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 tuning out distractions, listening with intent to understand, taking notes. Those would be the main things. How can someone make directions clear for others to understand? So this kind of goes back to that other question. If someone isn't understanding, you have to kind of try to understand how that person receives information. So some people are visual, some people can hear things and pick it up automatically. Some people you have to show them. So it's having a conversation with somebody, seeing it how they learn, and maybe trying all of those things. First, writing it down step by step, and if that doesn't work, telling them step by step. If that doesn't work, showing them. There's nothing wrong with saying, okay, let's come over here and let's do it together. Oftentimes, that's the best way to get someone to learn how to do something. What body language skills can someone develop to improve active listening? Definitely relaxed eye contact, facing the person, nodding your head. I know it sounds kind of goofy, but if you're listening to somebody and whether you agree with them or not, nodding your head is showing that you understand and that you are actively listening. So those are some things that I find are very helpful when I'm speaking to people, rather than this or this, or looking at their watch like, when is she getting done talking? So those are definitely nodding your head, keeping eye contact, being a part of that conversation. The last question was, is asking questions as you are listening to someone good or bad? Does asking questions while you are listening to someone make it seem as though you aren't listening or don't understand? Or does it further your listening skills and understanding of the topic? I think I already kind of touched on this. So I was very guilty of this early on in my career. Thinking ahead of, sometimes I would predict what the person was going to say next. It was like, oh, I know what they're going to say next. I already know what I'm going to say in response to this. I already know what questions I'm going to ask, and I would interrupt people. And I just can't, it's not a good thing. Don't interrupt people. Even if you have questions, I feel that it is a distraction. I know, having done it myself earlier when I was younger, I understand it was immaturity, and I just had questions, and I was excited a lot of times, but it's best to wait until the speaker is finished so that you don't distract the speaker, so that you show respect to the speaker, or I shouldn't say speaker, I'm speaking, but it could be with your manager or your coworker or your friend, okay? So it's showing respect, it's letting them be heard, it's using that empathetic listening with the intent to understand, not to reply. That's why I would not interrupt them. I would wait until afterwards, and that's where that taking handwritten notes comes into play. Because if you're like me, my brain moves fast. A lot of times I'm already on the next thing. I find it very helpful to write things down, and that's when I look over what I wrote down and I go back to that and I ask questions based on what I wrote down. So that was all the questions. I'm going to give it back to Mr. Cochran.
She had some great points about distractions. I know you guys are about to go back to class, right? Let's try to limit our distractions next time we're in our next classes and see how much more we can actually get out of what we're listening to from our teachers. Great job. Make sure you're checking your emails again. I'll be sending some stuff out here very shortly with your next